get a lot of good questions for him.
We'll be there. I know.
If it's some
We'll be
random
there.
person, yeah.
Yes. No, you're good. All right. So I think we are live. Yes, we are. Hey guys. Hello, modern. I hate saying hey guys because all the YouTubers do that. But hey, modern agents. Thank you so much again for joining us for Real Estate Coffee Talk. If you are watching live, I would love if you would kind of drop a comment, say where you're watching from, for two reasons. Again, because I love to see kind of all the different cities people are watching from, and because it helps keep this at the top, make sure other people are seeing it. So I will cut to the chase. Today we are welcomed by Kris Bennett, this gentleman over here, who also happens to be my brother-in-law. He won the
Yay.
lotto. So we're gonna a little bit about him. He works for passive investing, and even though we are related, and I know he works for passive investing, this is actually gonna be interesting for me because I kind of know what he does on a very surface level, but I'm really interested in my own kind of interest to figure out what he's really doing on a day-to-day basis. Because when by the time it gets from him to my sister to me, it doesn't make sense.
That's like the telephone game.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't get it. But okay. So Kris, thanks so much for coming. Tell us, a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you're not everyone's brother-in-law. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of personally, and then what you're doing for work right now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sarah, for having me on. Appreciate it. Know you guys and gals watching. Happy to be here and answer questions at the end and all that kind of stuff. And the topic might be a little off what is usually on the show. Of course, we're talking about commercial real estate investing and all that. But I started out in residential real estate, like a lot of you guys, back in 2007. So some of you guys may have been in high school at that time. I don't know. But back in 2007, the very first recession, the big recession that we all maybe can remember, that really affected our lives back then was 2008, 2009. So that's when I got my start. I was here in I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, actually in the same neighborhood as Sarah. But we got started 2008, 2009. My real estate licensing class, I still remember my first day was August 20th, 2007. That was my first day on the job as a real estate agent. So that was, long history there. We'll get into some of that. But currently, I'm the managing partner at passiveinvesting.com. That's actually the name of the company. If you go to our website, you'll see my pretty picture up there or whatever. I co-lead the self-storage investing team. So it's myself and my partner, John Allen. I also lead I host our podcast, the Storage Investor Nation podcast. Kind of recently relaunched that. Everything's going a little bit slow right now because deal flow and everything's kind of slowed down with rates, which we can talk about. So just retrenching on the podcast and getting that back up and going as well. So that's what I do right now.
Cool. And then he forgot to say he's married to my beautiful sister. And has
Been married to Amy. So it's kind of funny. Like I'm half Korean, right? My dad was American. My mom's Korean, South Korea, and not North Korea. She wouldn't be here. So, but anyway, so then our kids, my wife, Sarah looks obviously Spanish, Puerto Rican, right? And then Amy, her sister, looks like she's Irish. Blonde hair and all this stuff. She dyes it, but blonde hair. Yeah. And so our kids look like straight up Aryan. I don't know how else to say it. Like very white. They did not get any of my genes. Like no dark hair.
I remember we were
eyes.
so excited. Remember we were so excited, like when you were gonna have your first, and I remember Amy being like, "Oh my gosh, they're gonna have like black hair, big brown eyes," and then somehow they had all three very blonde kids, and it's hilarious because no one would believe they had a touch of Korean or Puerto Rican in them. They just look, but they're all very cute. All right, so I'm curious. I know that 2007, 2008 was obviously a rough time in the real estate world. I wasn't around for that. I was alive, but I wasn't around in the real estate industry. So tell us kind of like, what was your path to going from that residential real estate life into like, what led you into where you are now?
Yeah, there's a couple pivot points that I like to call them. And I think we all have that in our life where we're on one track, something happens, our eyes get open to something, or maybe sometimes somebody mentions something once in our life and we think about, oh, that's cool. And you don't really think about it. And then like 3 years later, something happens like, oh my gosh, I remember, oh, this is what that is. And you make a change and like a shift. So I wanted to get into, I guess it wasn't on purpose. It was by accident. So 2008, 9, 10, 11, I was doing real estate. It was tough, guys. Nobody could buy anything unless you were doing cash deals, which some people were. You know, there was investors I worked with that were doing cash deals, but it was really tough to make the numbers work and buy a house at that time to get financing. So I said, you know what? I hate real estate, and decided to go and just get an education, get my degree, and go from there. So if you fast forward, I went to community college, transferred to university, and then while I was there, the only job in the summer I could find that I didn't get paid for actually, but the only job in the summer I could find was working at a what they call a private equity real estate firm, and I didn't even know what that word meant. But that was ironic. This is the only job I could find. I don't want anything to do with real estate. I want to go do some super Asian nerdy math stuff. That's really what I wanted to do, and get a job at a company somewhere and just die working there. That's what I wanted. I wanted some stable income. So working at this real estate firm, like first couple of weeks on the job, I was doing some financial underwriting is what they call it. We think of underwriting like in like the residential world. You send the all the loan docs to the underwriter, right? And then they tell you if a client is approved or not. And you're crossing your fingers that they're approved, so you can get that deal
Yeah.
closed or under contract or
Yeah.
closed. So in
Yeah.
underwriting in commercial real estate, it's kind of like that, but you're using all of the income and numbers from the property to figure out if it makes a profitable sense to invest in the property. Anyway, he was buying 16 multifamily properties in like the Charlotte, call it Charlotte, North Carolina area. And I think he was paying whatever, $100 million for all the properties, something like that. I had never seen that many zeros in my life on anything,
Right.
and what he was paying for it and how he was financing. I was like, where is he getting the money? Because if you put down 30%, let's call it 100 million, $30 million. Like, does he have that in the bank? Where does he get this money from? So I realized, oh, he is actually raising money from other investors to go and purchase these properties. And then I realized, oh, I looked at each of them. So underwriting in the commercial world, you usually use Excel, and you put in all the financial data and all the characteristics of like the apartment, so 100 units, and here's the expenses or whatever. So I realized that you look at what he was paying on a what they call a per door basis. So like in single
Mhm.
family, I know that all of you guys have seen, the HGTV shows where they flip a house and they might buy some rental properties or whoever it is, right? Chip and Joanna Gaines, they go and they flip homes. They don't do that anymore on TV, but or do they? I
Yeah.
don't know. But anyway, the point is that you see that like, oh, you can go buy a house and then you fix it up and you rent it for a couple $100. Back then it was a couple $100. Now it's like $2,000 for a 1-bedroom house in Charlotte or whatever. But anyway, the point is you rent it, you get some cash flow, you sell it later on. He was buying, let's say it was an average of 100 doors per complex. So essentially it was like buying 100 single family homes at one time. And I realized, oh my gosh, you can do that, spread across the expenses across those doors, and make a really nice profit on that. And so the wheels started turning. And I remembered back to when I was a residential agent, back to that pivot, right? I remember back when I was a residential agent and I was like curious about commercial. And I mentioned to my broker in charge, and he's like, "Oh, don't mess with that. That's too complicated. Just stick with what you're doing." It kind of like in a sense, he didn't mean to, but in a sense, it kind of shut me down because I was actually naturally curious, like, oh, what is that? How does that work? It was just like, don't do that. Go ahead and stick with your residential stuff. I was like, oh, okay. But again, this is years later. This is like
Yeah.
whatever, 4 or 5 years later, it all clicked. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is commercial real estate. You can buy 100 doors plus or minus at one time, get money from investors, not use much of your own or some of your own, but not the whole
Right.
thing to buy it, right? Not the 30 million to buy it. And then you invest in it, you hold it for 5 or whatever years, you improve it, and then you can sell it for a profit later on. That's how this works. And so that's what got me into that world.
What and then I guess I want to know kind of how you ended up getting self-storage. But my one question from that would be
Yeah.
because again, to like your average agent, right? For me, I hear someone buying when I see stories about people buying multiple doors or owning hundreds of properties, I'm like, your
Mhm.
family must have had money, someone must have passed something on to you. But is that something that like pretty much any person who's just responsible with their money has built up a little bit of savings, like people can start without necessarily having the capital to buy multiple properties at a time?
Yeah,
Like how
yeah,
what
yeah.
kind of
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but like, yeah, so if I'm putting myself in the shoes of you guys, your audience, right? So, and
Right.
I've been there as an agent, usually what you're doing is trying to find the next client, right? The next buyer or seller. You're hoping for a listing so you can put a sign in the yard to get a buyer off that sign because each listing you should get, you should generate that. Then you get the house under contract and you calculate your commission. So you're looking at all those numbers and you got to pay your taxes and all that stuff. And you're like, how the heck do I go from doing that and just really trying to get my one man shop off the ground to what Kris is talking about? Because that's just out in like Mars. That's like left field kind of stuff. Although
Right.
it is interesting, right? So you might have an audience like that, and some of you guys might be already have your foot in the door, or maybe you're trying to figure that part of things out. You've seen that, hey, there's value here. How do I get there? I just don't have the money to do it. I'm not talking about low and no money down and some gimmick kind of thing. The way I look at it is you have partnerships. And in a partnership, there's time, knowledge, and money. You sometimes most people don't have all three. Sometimes they do, but most likely they don't. They have time, they have knowledge, they don't have money, or they have knowledge and money, but they don't have time because they do some other job or whatever. So
Right.
usually somebody has two out of the three. If you have time and you have knowledge, you don't have to have all of the money. So what you would do is you look for a partner. And there's steps to that. You go to meetups, you get online, you get involved in forums, you meet people literally online, you start following some of the influencers out there on Instagram, et cetera, who do some of this stuff. I understand that some of it can come across as gimmicky, kind of like guru kind of stuff. And
Right.
yes, I agree with that. But there is truth to what they're saying. If you kind of just weave through that, or maybe find someone who doesn't post pictures of their newest car and Rolex watch all the time or whatever. Nothing wrong
Ferrari.
with that stuff. Right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Nothing wrong. I'm not, we all want nice
Yeah.
things. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying
Get
sometimes that could be
get
it
your
could be a
purpose.
turnoff, right? And you kind of
Right.
shut down the information from that person. I'm saying just push past that a little bit and then just say, okay, what is this person actually teaching and does it actually work? Kind of like with fitness, if you read like 5 to 10 fitness blogs or books or whatever, they're going to have their bent, they're not their bent, their like thing they're trying to tell you, their teacher or whatever, but they're all going to kind of say some of the same things: get sleep, drink a lot of water, eat healthy. So you can say, all right, if 10 out of 10 are saying that, that's probably true. It's the same thing with like the gurus or whoever, the influencers out there. They'll talk about,
Yeah.
I think Bigger Pockets just came out with a book on partnerships, and we can talk about resources and all that stuff. But I didn't read
Yeah.
the book, but I'm just telling you on my own experience. So to answer your
Right.
question, long answer to a short question, uh, partnerships. I didn't have the money when I started. Some of the best ways you can get started is actually working for someone that's doing what you want to do. So I got that job at Eller Capital. It was an internship in the summer. I didn't get paid at that time. It was just
Mm.
getting knowledge. That was even though I wasn't paid, I was paid in knowledge. It was a
Yeah.
key turning point, and I realized, oh, this is how it is done, right? And so that getting that knowledge and building on it through my education and I got a job out of school, and that's how I, pivoted to self storage. We could talk about that. But the point is, I
Yeah.
worked for someone. They paid me to learn on their dime and make mistakes on their dime, building up the knowledge
Okay.
and the contacts so that later
Yeah.
on, when it's time to go do my own thing or whatever I was going to do, I'd have that base there. So, again, building up your partnerships, that's important. That can help somebody transition from what they're doing now to investing. You don't have to have all the money, but you got to have one of the three: time, knowledge, or money. You don't have to have all the money. You need some time, you might
Right.
need some knowledge, and go find someone with the money and partner up.
And do you think that's something I do want to get into self-storage, but I just want to follow
Yeah,
this track. Do you think
yeah,
it's
yeah.
something because I know in all these real estate groups and all this stuff, they're always talking about, the average real estate. Let's say someone really does well on residential real estate and they love it, but they're talking
Yeah.
about the end game for a real estate agent, right? So what are you doing? You don't want to be 80 years old and dealing with super boxes and all this stuff, right? So do you think an agent that does well, is this something that instead of, they always say every real estate agent should own real estate, but some people don't. I know when I think about owning investment properties, I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about fixing up stuff. Like if a tenant called
Hmm.
me, my husband doesn't either. And then you just hear nightmare stories. I don't know if I'd want to get into that. Can
Yeah.
people, regular real estate agents, can they get into commercial investing without necessarily doing it for a job? Can they
That's
make
yeah.
that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, Absolutely. I
That
mean, that's
okay.
exactly what I did. So like I'm
Yeah,
proof in the pudding in a sense. I don't want to receive phone calls either. I don't want to fix anything. I don't want
yeah,
to deal with the customers or the tenants or whatever. I don't want any of that because I'm not good at that stuff right now. I want to focus on what I am good at, right? So any person can do this. We're not going to have the same path, right? No two people's paths are going to be the exact same,
mhm,
but you can take some nuggets from what I'm saying. The point is I went and I got educated, then I found some
mhm.
partnerships, partners, etc. Then we went out and we did the whole thing. And educated doesn't
Good.
mean you have to go to school. There's educating
Right.
yourself through books, through podcasts, through meetups, through all when I was in school, the information is completely different. There's so much out there now compared to back even 5, 6, 7 years ago. So it's out there. You
Right.
don't have to go to college to get the education is what I'm talking is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But yeah,
Don't tell
so
too much after that.
I think it's good to do. I think if you're a
Yeah,
young
yeah.
person, you should
For
definitely
that
do it.
specific reason, because whenever I go back and forth with him, he's very entrepreneurial, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh, should I just let him? But when I hear things like when you talk about the connections you made there, it
that's
wasn't
super
obviously
important.
the
That
educational
is
value was
incredibly important. People don't realize that. And I didn't answer your question the first time around, so remind me to get back to it. But on the point of
yeah,
education, people don't realize they think, oh, MBA is a waste of time, $150,000 waste of time. Yes, if you're trying to pivot from one career to another and you want to be kind of in the corporate world, or you want some doors to open up for you to get a job, and then maybe you want to be an entrepreneur later on, or whatever the story may be. Yes, you do get
right,
the education, get that foundation, but the real, true additional benefit is the network that you build as a result of that. So I can tap into. I'll be actually in a class later this year. UNC Chapel Hill. That's where I went to school. They just opened up an office. They just opened up a campus here in Charlotte, in downtown Charlotte. I'll be speaking and presenting at their MBA, executive MBA program here at the end of October. I have that
awesome,
connection to go back and raise money from grads and alumni who've been at the school because they generally go on to be pretty successful and
yeah,
they have the capital to invest. There's the time, knowledge, and the money. They don't
yeah,
have the time, but they do have the money. They may not have the knowledge, but they want to invest with someone they know, like, and trust. And so there's
yeah,
that whole aspect that people don't fully understand. So yes, the education
I love
piece is
that.
important, and you do learn some stuff. So anyway, but back to the question you had before about how to manage all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, if I put myself in just again like your shoes, you don't want to fix anything. You don't want the call from the tenant, my toilet's clogged or whatever. There's a couple ways to do it. You can still buy like single family homes. I'm not saying don't do that. You can still buy
Right,
single family homes, rent them out to people, and then hire a property management company, a residential property management company, to handle those calls for you. They charge whatever
right,
8, 10%, whatever that number is, but it's
right,
well worth it because you don't want to. You might look at the numbers and be like, man, I'm paying them a buttload of money, but it's worth it because you don't want to handle that call, and you may not be good at it, but you might be good at finding the next property or
yeah,
partnering with someone to
yeah,
find the next property. Then you use the property management company to manage all of those things for you. Once you've built up
right,
the equity in the homes, you then sell them and roll that into something else, hopefully a commercial real estate deal. If you're doing commercial real estate, even if you do like multifamily, you can buy like 30 unit multifamily properties. You can still have a property management company handle everything for you. It'll be a little bit more expensive. If you bought 100
right.
units, that cost is like less because of the number of units. But anyway, the point is yeah, definitely. I would never personally. I never want to receive a phone call from a tenant. Like
No.
I don't want that at all.
I'd
So
be a
yeah,
bad landlord
definitely use
because they'd be like, some things. I mean, we can't even figure out like how to change our shower. What I mean? So
it.
we'd be terrible landlords. All right, cool. So that really gave me a lot of insight. So, and I see that there's people interested here, so I'm excited to get to those. But
Good.
we have commercial real estate. So how did you get into like that self storage line of
Yeah, like
commercial
what the
real
heck
estate?
is that all about, right? So
Yeah,
I
I'm
finished up
so curious.
school. I worked. You might remember this, Sarah. So I finished up school and I worked at a firm in Raleigh. So this is like 2016. I got a job at a firm, a really commercial estate firm in Raleigh. They're called 10 Federal. If anybody wants to look them up, it's 10federal.com. 10federal.com. So I was there, big fancy title, director of acquisitions. So my role is to go out there and literally bird dog deals. That's all that means. You're looking for deals.
Yeah,
Call brokers, call owners, find us the next deal. My job was to look for multifamily deals. So they would not buy anything under 80 units. And this is getting into weeds a little bit, but the reason nothing under 80 is because the property management is easier and better the bigger you go. It's also easier to finance a deal the bigger you go, which is contrary to the way most of us think. If you get a
Right.
smaller storage deal, it's actually harder to find the financing on that than it is a large storage deal. It sometimes can be harder to finance $1 million storage deal than it is a $10 million storage deal, believe it or not.
Wow.
So we can talk about that. And one thing I do want to talk about are the numbers and how to make money in commercial real estate when you look for deals. I think that'd be very interesting for people. But anyway,
Yes.
I was looking for a multifamily. I called every single multifamily property that fit our criteria. I talked to the brokers. We couldn't make the numbers work. It was crazy back then in 2016, 2017, just the
Yeah.
pricing and all that stuff. You think it's nuts now, it was nuts back then too. It's never
Right.
not nuts. It's never not easy. So it's always hard.
Not in
But
this
anyway,
area.
no,
Yeah.
no. It's not easy. It takes persistence. Anyway,
Yeah.
so uh, long story short, the guys I worked for is two brothers. They owned the firm, and they owned and managed like maybe three. I think it was at the time three smaller self storage facilities. So small meaning let's call it 300 units or less, and that sounds like a big number, but in storage that's generally small, 100 to 300 units. So they like that aspect of things. And every time we talked to a broker, we would meet with like the big brokerage shops like CBRE, JLL. They at the time like HFF, they existed at the time, and they would all
Right.
tell us, "Hey guys, you're multi." Because we needed the help to raise equity for the deals. We didn't have all the. There's the money thing again. We didn't have
Yeah.
all the equity. I certainly didn't, and the partners I was working with had some, but not all of it. So we would
Yeah.
use firms to help us raise money. Well, we would sit down to dinner. We had a lunch with them, one of the firms up in Raleigh, and they said, "Guys, your multifamily strategy isn't exciting." So we're like, "Okay, great. No equity for that." Yeah, that was amazing. I got two kids at home trying to put food on the table, and we can't
I
raise
know.
money. Okay, great. Why am I working here? So anyway,
I know.
but every time one of the founders would talk about self storage and what they were doing in the self storage world, all the eyes would get big, and they literally said at the table, "Well, if you find a deal, let us know because we'll put money in that." So we went back to the office that day. I can remember as clear as day. We're standing there. I'm like, dude, every time we talk about storage, people get excited. Like, I don't know what we should do, but we should do something in that aspect, in that. And so come back
Yeah.
like it was like the following week, Monday or whatever. And he's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out. We're going to use technology. We're going to buy these mom and pop small deals. We're going to renovate them and blah, 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 blah. We're going to raise $10 million to go out there and do this. We're going to do a little storage, self-storage, private equity fund is what it was called at the time. So we're going to raise a bunch of money, put it in a big bucket, go out and buy deals. That's the idea. So that's how I didn't know jack squat about storage. And back then, this is 2016, 2017. I think there was one book, one, maybe two, but definitely one book written about how to invest in self storage by Mark Helm. That book is still out there. I read it like 3 or 4 times. You should go buy it on Amazon if anybody's interested. It's a great book. Mark is a great guy. But that I educated myself. I took I think it was like 2, 3 weeks. It was about 3 weeks of literally just Googling how to invest in self storage. I didn't know anything. The guys with me knew some stuff, so they would share some things, but it was like they found the deals that they were doing because I think it just came up by conversation or
Just
it was just, yeah, some random, it wasn't like a targeted thing that they were doing specifically. So anyway, I just kind of stumbled into it. And that's how most people get into this little thing called self-storage investing. They kind of stumble into it. As an agent, if I put myself in the agent shoes, the agent hat on, it's
Yeah.
very natural based upon the TV shows we see and the Instagram and all that stuff. It's very easy to understand residential and to want to go out and buy residential rental properties. That's a very natural progression. Then you go to multifamily, and it makes a ton of sense. It's
Right.
more difficult to wrap your head around maybe how retail works or office works, especially like how self storage works. But it's not that hard. And now there is a lot of information out there on how to get into self storage investing if somebody wants to get into it. So yeah, that's how we made that
Uh,
pivot. I made that pivot back in 2016, 2017.
so what's the difference that you have found? I mean, obviously residential and a commercial are two totally different beasts, right? But like commercial where that 100 plus unit whatever compared to self storage, like as an investor, I know I've seen videos and you mentioned like poop and homeless people in these things. So like
Yeah.
what are like the what would you say are like the risks to the average investor, or can they be kind of hands off with it?
Yeah. So I think every asset class has its problems. If you look on any article right now, wherever on commercial real estate, the big problem spot right now is office, right? Because trying to get people back to the office. Whereas before the
Mhm.
pandemic, office is great, it's booming, et cetera. So there are pros and cons and trade offs to everything. If you do multifamily in certain cities and whatnot, you'll have, remember during, I don't want to remember, but during the coronavirus pandemic
Yeah,
thing, I don't think anybody wants to remember
yeah,
that. But yeah, you had
yeah,
certain municipalities and cities that were restricting evictions and couldn't raise rents, et cetera. Which we understand. There's a humanitarian aspect. I totally get
of
that.
course.
But the
Yeah,
problem is the owners of the properties still got to pay their bill, and so if there's a rent moratorium for a while to help people, I get it. I totally get that. The problem is somebody still got to pay the mortgage, and so you can run into issues on the multifamily side as well. In self storage, you'll get the biggest ones are theft and people trying to live in units. Of course, there's always like other little things, but as far as big
yeah,
headaches are concerned, theft. So what will happen is you'll rent a unit to somebody who's not of the utmost character, and they will
yeah.
move in. But what they're doing is they're trying to see is the manager on site? When are they on site? When
Um,
can I come after hours? So if we're open till 10 p.m., the manager goes home at 5 or 6 or whatever. Nobody's there for a couple of hours. Can I come there and kind of break into units and see what's going on? If I happen to bump into another customer on site, I can take a peek in their unit and see what's in there and then make a note and come back and try to steal their stuff later on.
yeah,
And those kind of people typically run in circles with other criminals. And so
yeah,
we've had it at our facilities where two groups of people will move in and they will work together to break into units and steal stuff. So that can happen. And then the other is people trying to live in units. That happens across the board. Theft happens across the board too,
yeah.
where somebody tries to not live. I'm sorry. Somebody tries to rent a unit and live in a 10 by 20. A large 20 by 20 unit is way cheaper than renting an apartment. I can tell you that right now. And if you rented a nice climate controlled facility, it's very comfortable in there.
Yeah,
Shoot, you roll down
yeah.
that door, put a little light. Somebody posted on LinkedIn like they were like worst things you've seen, and I was like, well, it's one time I was literally touring a facility, and there was like you could see the roofs. It was like a sloped land, and so you could stand at one point and see the roofs. And I saw TV rabbit ear antennas sticking out of one of the units. They had drilled a hole and put. Where's the manager? They were like, nobody's checking the property. Literally, she wasn't. She was in the office, not checking the property. So anyway, that's a value add opportunity there is get a new manager.
Yeah, yeah,
But the one guy was
yeah.
like, somebody had an entire. They had a jukebox, a couch, a refrigerator, like this whole setup inside this large, whatever it was, 15 by
That is
20 unit or
nuts.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
insane. So the manager should catch that stuff, but oftentimes they can be kind of lazy
they miss it.
sometimes. So
Especially in like,
yeah,
I've seen a lot of them that are these big 24-hour ones. I mean, and a lot of them,
no, yeah,
I
not a good idea.
yeah, I don't remember seeing anyone on staff.
I
Like
mean, would you,
it
as a
was
woman, right, want to
well,
go to a 24-hour facility like at 1 o'clock in the morning? Those things are
no,
creepy.
I was
Like,
creeped out in the middle of the day because you go,
yeah,
it was whatever's that big one with the orange branding. I don't
public
remember the name.
storage.
Yeah, public storage. And it was like 4 floors. Her room was all the way in the back. I was creeped out in the
Yeah,
middle of the day, and I was like, but it
yeah.
was such a big building that was like, man, how did they even keep an eye on this stuff all day? It's
Yeah, it's all
kind of
you have a couple things real quick. So some people might be thinking, yeah, that's a freaking mess. I don't want to deal with people living there and theft and all that. Guys, I don't want to get calls about the toilets at 1 a.m. or the management get calls. You have 100 units, you have 100 toilets, 100 over 100 sinks, over 100 whatever, roaches
right.
galore, whatever, people, neighbors fighting and all that kind of stuff. In storage, the nice thing is if somebody's trying to live in the unit, it's illegal. It's against the law. It's also against the contract that they signed. So we call the police and literally escort them out the same day. To
Yeah,
clean
you
the
don't have to
unit
like
out,
go through the process.
no, there's no
Yeah,
fair housing. Yeah, there's no fair housing laws. So
yeah.
not that we go around discriminating against people, but there's no fair housing laws. So nobody can
Yeah, yeah,
file a lawsuit. You treated me unfairly or whatever. Nobody
right.
generally cares about self storage. If somebody doesn't pay their rent, guys, I've dealt with evictions when I first got started, 2007, 8, 9. I was doing foreclosure work. I was single, no kids. I would show up at people's houses. And I say that because I would show up at people's houses with the sheriff's deputy to literally lock them out, like foreclose on them. I would drill the locks out in the front, go through the property, take pictures of everything, put new locks on there, and now the property belongs to the bank. And these folks with a family and all that, I've had seen some heartbreaking things. I couldn't do that work now because I have a family with kids and I can't just go kicking people out of homes. I understand the financial aspects of things and the people's got to make money and the investor. I get that. I just don't have a heart to do that now. But back then, I mean, I would see kids' toys on the floor and I didn't know what that meant emotionally. But it's tough. In storage,
Yeah.
somebody doesn't pay, you don't evict them. You don't go down to the
Yeah.
court, the magistrate's office, and get an eviction and all that stuff. You just auction their stuff to
They
turn
decided
the
it.
unit. Literally, like if
Yeah.
you had to foreclose on my house, God forbid, like we'd have to like do it. And I left all this here. This is like my kids' homeschool area with their Xbox stuff back there. But if I left
Yeah.
this, you have to get a personal property eviction. You can't do anything until the court allows you to remove my stuff, right? But in
Oh,
storage, if this was a unit, just sweep this stuff out, auction it off. You're ready to go. You can turn a unit in like an hour once it's cleaned
um,
out. It's less than an hour. You literally just blow it out,
yes, it's
sweep it out. It's
more
ready to go.
more
Yeah, it's
business. Like I've
very,
seen the emotional part of residential real estate was really hard for me. And not so much I didn't have to do any of that stuff, but like people not getting appraisal, people getting upset. Like I'm such a people pleaser. I could see why people move to the commercial side because it's very much like numbers, Excel, this, that. And I think I would in
yeah,
one way enjoy that a little bit more.
absolutely. I
So
think a lot of us would. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, quick. Okay, so you're the company that you kind of work for now is called Passive Investing, right? So
Hmm.
how when it comes to self storage, how passive really is it? And do you get like who are the people that you help to buy these units now? These
Yeah,
corporations? How does it work where you are?
yeah. So we raise money. I guess to back up for a second. So we raise money from retail, what we call retail investors. So people like us, right? Let's
Yeah,
say but you have to be what's called accredited. People can look that up, but basically just means you have a certain level of income that if you invest with somebody and you are not doing the work on a day-to-day basis, you're passive, in other words. Um,
yeah,
you invest your money with somebody. If that person was to lose your money, it would not cause a major financial impact in your life, right? So the
yeah,
SEC says people can invest with you, but they have to have a certain net worth or a certain amount of income. And that's why that's there. So the average person could not invest with us based upon that because if we were to lose $50,000 of their money, or anyone for that matter were to lose $50,000 of anyone's money, that would probably be
right.
a pretty substantial hit to our income. So not a good
Yeah.
idea. So that's who we raise money from. If you think
Okay.
a little stereotypical, but if you think like doctors, lawyers, whatever, I'm not trying to like say it's only those people because there's plenty of people who own their own business, they do something else, but they want to
Mm,
invest and grow their income and grow their net worth, et cetera. So they will invest with us. Even some other real estate guys who do what we do will actually invest with other real estate guys and gals because they want to kind of diversify their income. And maybe you can
yeah.
find a deal or source a deal that we can't for whatever reason. So I want to invest some capital with you guys. And sometimes they do it just to, in a sense, spy, to learn what they do and learn best practices. So there's a whole range of people out there, but they are passive. So they do something else. So they don't have the time, but they have the money. They might have some knowledge, but they don't want to get into the weeds. They don't want to deal with the day to day like we do. So we have a third party management company that handles all of our property management, but we have to manage the manager. Just like if you were to buy a rental property, you still want to keep up with the books and kind of what's going on.
Mm,
Just you just want to look at it like, okay, where are we spending money? Oh, that makes sense. Okay, great. You might spend
yeah.
30 minutes a month looking at it. So that's what we do. So we raise money. We essentially connect the passive investor with deals, and we do the work to get the deal found, funded, and closed.
That makes sense. Do you find people ever partner up? Because I mean, when you talk about doctor and lawyer incomes, lots of real estate agents who have been successful in this probably make more than doctors and lawyers.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
find people ever kind of like partner up together to do
Yeah,
these
you can.
deals?
It really depends on what the person wants to do. So let's
Yeah.
say if I was in real estate, let's say I went back personally, if I went back to residential real estate, I would start my own firm. I would grow that firm and recruit other agents to work under me. And maybe I just really enjoy doing that on a day-to-day basis. And now I'm making some money. The agents are making money. We're doing great as a firm. We're growing.
Mhm.
I want to invest some of that money with somebody else. Sure, I might find a Kris Bennett or whomever out there doing this type of work because I don't want to take my time and go learn all that, right? To learn commercial or to learn multifamily or self storage, I kind of got to learn all of this stuff. I want to have a general idea, so I might watch some of your webinars or whatever it is to get myself comfortable with you as a person, to know,
Mhm.
like, and trust you. But beyond that, I really enjoy running my residential real estate brokerage firm, and I'll invest with you on the side. So, like, there is some of that as well. I think,
'Cause why
you know,
reinvent the wheel, you know?
yeah, yeah. Unless you really want to. Some people are built that way. They want to get their firm going and they hire a broker in charge and they pay that person, maybe they pay them a salary or whatever, just to manage and motivate and coach their agents. And they are the owner, but they have that broker in charge in place and like a corporate team in
Mhm.
place to help oversee the finances, et cetera. And then they want to
Right.
go do something else and start another, company or vertical or whatever. So they might get involved. There's people that do that. There's plenty of people I'm connected to on LinkedIn, they have their own firm, but they also invest in multifamily as well. So there's a couple ways to do it. There's no, my math teacher used to say, there's no one way to the cookie jar. You can get there many different ways as long as you get that cookie.
Right. I feel very subpar right now. I'm like
Really? Why?
I'm like,
Why?
I just had a few deals going at a time and I was like overwhelmed. And it's crazy. You hear people like my husband knows a lot of guys who own dealerships. They own, they're minority
Yeah.
owners in these fractional dealerships. And then they're running dealerships, they're investing in commercial buildings. They're in everything. But I think they're
Hmm.
hiring people who really, it's like you said, I guess they have the money and maybe, a little semblance of knowledge, but not the time. So they're
Yeah.
hiring people who know what they're doing and they're just
Yeah.
kind of investing everywhere. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
do you need, so we talked about, I guess, like that, accredited investor. Do you need a lot of money to start in commercial investing, even outside of your company? Or, or is that a place where you can partner to start? That's where you should
Yeah, I
partnerships
mean,
should
if
come.
you're looking at the capital side of things, usually if you're going to invest with another firm, they're going to do, I don't get too deep in the weeds, but they do a certain type of regulated, what they call an offering. So literally, Sarah, you and I can go online and find one of these groups. For example, a lot of your listeners and viewers here might be familiar with Bigger Pockets, biggerpockets.com. A lot of good stuff
Yeah.
on that website, a lot of good resources. One of the co-hosts of the podcast was Brandon Turner. If you guys listened to it back in the day, it was Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin. They co-hosted. Josh started the company and co-hosted the podcast. Well, Brandon did the podcast for years and years and years. Grew a massive network, right? He wrote a few books, et cetera, et cetera. People really like him. Well, he started a firm called Open Door Capital. You guys can look that up, opendoorcapital.com. They just closed on a 3-property multifamily portfolio. I think it was in Houston or somewhere in Texas. I don't remember what it was. Call it $60 million or something like that. He raised that money from the people that were, his friends and part of his network, et cetera. So he's an example of, yeah, it really just depends on what you want to do. He's going to offer, let's say he's going to raise money from the average viewer. They will do what's called a 506c. It's a regulated offering. And they will say you have to have that accredited investor status, so minimum net worth or income. And then your minimum investment might be 25,000 or 50,000. If you want a
Yeah.
better return or profit, maybe the minimum is 100,000 or whatever. So yes, but that is because you're passive. You've made your money somewhere else and you're thinking of investing to grow it. And if you were to lose that 25, 50, or 100, it would not greatly impact your income and your net worth, et cetera, because you're not going to be hands-on. All you do literally is you send them the money. They send you some documents to sign, some legal stuff to sign. You sign off. And then within 45 days, you start collecting a rent check based upon how much you invested. And you literally do nothing else. And they
It's
handle
really
everything
not
for you.
that much. I mean, $25,000 isn't pennies, but when you go to buy, right now where we are, let's say if the average price point is 350, if you're buying an investment property, you're at, I mean, $60,000. And
Yeah.
then there's a financial guy I follow, and he always says, like, With renting, that number is the max you're going to pay, but with buying, that number is the minimum you're going to pay. So if you're
Yeah.
just starting to get into investing, you're still out $60,000 to start, let's say at
Either
minimum, and
way,
then you have
right? So you're saying,
other.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right,
So I'd
right.
kind of rather invest in something I know, hey, these people know what they're doing already. I don't have to worry about,
Yeah,
is it
that's the
work?
idea.
Yeah. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
So how do those people, I guess my question would be, if I buy a residential investment property, I know that I can, cash out. If it's not working, I can sell. How does that work when someone invests in commercial? Do they like sell their share, for lack of a better word? Like
Mhm.
how, let's say they want to pull out, how do they do that?
Yeah, so on the commercial side, and even in residential, they're going to, let's use Brandon Turner for example, the Open Door Capital multifamily thing.
Mhm.
So if you're going to invest with him, there's going to be a minimum timeline that your investment's going to be with him. So if you invest $50,000, let's say, they're going to say it's a minimum of 5 years. So technically,
Okay.
you cannot get your money back for 5 years. And that's actually a good thing because people see the trade-off there that like, oh man, I can get my money back if I invest in the stock market. I can take that out anytime. Yeah, but with with commercial real estate, you're right. The idea is that you're going to invest in a market in an area for a longer period of time to see the value of that area, that market, whatever, grow over time. So you have to actually put more thought into it because yeah, you can't get your money back quickly. But if you
Yeah.
believe in commercial real estate, if you believe in the location, then you are going to feel comfortable with that. And again, since you're accredited, that 50,000, you shouldn't really need that. It happens, but you shouldn't really need that in any emergency situation because you're making enough money. So it allows you to leave that money in there for 5 years and let it sit, almost like a CD in a sense.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
there is the ability to cash out if you need to. You can always call them. They'll say, you know what, we might make an exception just on a case by case basis, and they usually try to keep investors happy and work with them. So if you really needed it, you can get it back earlier, but there may be some penalty. There may not be. It just depends on how they structure that. But it is generally
Yeah.
a long term investment, just like any real estate.
I mean, that makes sense too, because you
Yeah,
should
I mean, if you bought,
sometimes
yeah,
a
you
real
should,
estate, it's like a down market. You don't want to, even with like my 403b or my IRA now, but I
yeah,
remember like when times have when it's dropped, I'm like panic mode, and I'll call the
yeah,
financial
yeah.
advisor. No, you're supposed to ride, you have to ride the wave,
You can't
because
worry about that. Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah,
in there
you
until you're
can't like,
whatever 65 or whatever it is. So you ride the wave. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Okay. So let me run through these questions real quick. Okay. So, and then we will go to our, what do I call it? I forgot the word for it. It'll come back to me. Okay. So someone said, how can we reach out to Kris about partnering? They have an investor looking to get into self-storage and would like to know more.
yeah. You can just shoot me a DM. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search for me. I think I might have it in the
Yeah,
show
I
notes or
will
whatever.
put,
But
let me see. Go ahead. I'm gonna grab
yeah, yeah, I have
your,
she'll share a link tree thing that
yeah.
has everywhere I'm at, so you can always connect there. I'm more active some places than others. It just depends, but I'm on all of them, so I'll get the message and then we can go from there.
Right. Yes, I will. Do you know your link tree off the top of your head? I'll
No,
pull it up.
but if you just look up at
Okay.
Kris
I will, I
Kris
will,
at Kris
yeah,
Bennett
yeah.
1000, you'll
Oh,
find me.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
real easy.
And then someone said, I'd like to learn more about investing without being the landlord, as you just mentioned. So, yeah, same thing. I think if they follow you, you have a lot of like resources that you can probably, or you can just,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um,
It's really, I mean, we have a podcast there that people can listen to. Bigger Pockets is another great resource. It's very straightforward. What I'm saying, we kind of, it's a given, right? We're going to talk about a number of different topics and different things, but really it boils down to being, it's very simple. It's not super difficult. If you were to find a residential property that made sense numbers wise, and you bought it and you closed on it, but you don't want to rent it. I'm sorry, you don't want to manage it yourself. Probably before you closed, you found a property management company in the area. You knew somebody from your licensing class or whatever. Hey, can you manage this for me? How much is that going to cost? And that's literally all it is, right? You sign some paperwork and they manage it for you. It's the exact same idea with commercial real estate. It's not super hard. I didn't get into the details of everything there, but that's just a high level overview of how it works. But happy
Yeah.
to answer those questions further. Just connect with me online. It's totally fine.
Yeah, Chris is I'm gonna put his link in comments. He's always like super helpful. I know he loves talking about it.
Yeah.
And then someone also said, do you build out or are you mostly taking over existing storage? I did look up mod box storage and see you are doing car
Yeah.
washes and multifamily in North Carolina. On the
Yeah, we do. So
self-storage. Okay, go ahead. Go because it was like
yeah,
a
yeah.
two-part question.
No, no. Okay. So modbox.com, that's our storage website for all of our storage assets. I don't do, yes. So the firm passiveinvesting.com does multifamily and car washes and obviously storage. I lead the storage team. I don't do anything with multifamily or car wash. So if you want to learn more, obviously go to our website, sign up for our passive investing club, and you can find out more about what we're doing there. You get our newsletter in the mail. You also get one online. You can always keep up with us. But on the self storage side, we will buy and we will add on and construct more, build more units if it makes sense. So we have we bought a deal here in Charlotte. We have 13 locations. So we bought a deal here in Charlotte. It's in the Mint Hill area. And we're adding on another 50,000 square feet. That translates to roughly plus or minus three to 400 units there. And then we completed construction on another 20,000 square feet in Gastonia. That's about 150 units plus or minus. And then we just completed another expansion in Evans, Colorado, which is just north of Denver, Colorado, over there. And that was, call it about 12,000 square feet, call it roughly 75 to 100 units. So yes, we will add on. We don't do any ground up, like pure ground up on the storage side. We are doing a boat and RV expansion. So we have a location in Indianapolis, Indiana. We call it the Guardian RV Storage. And that's like class A. When I say that, they're climate controlled big buildings. And if you walk up to them, the doors are 14-foot roll up doors. They're, I think it's 15 or 14 by 50 deep bays, and it's climate controlled. So people can park there like really nice, literally, I mean, they're really nice RVs and boats and whatever else, food trucks and all that stuff in there. They don't have to worry about the weather. So we are actually looking for land to build more class A boat and RV storage. But on the self-storage side, we don't do any ground up self-storage buildings right now.
Okay, and then the other part of his question was on the self-storage portion business, are you franchising to new owners?
No, we don't do that. There's one guy who will coach. I forgot his name now, but it's a storage authority. Storage authority. If you want to look him up, he's been around a long time. He's reputable, etc. But he will. Let's say you have some land, or you just have the money, and you want to own your own facility and build it from the ground up. He will help you source the land, go through the development process, get it going, open it up, and help you put in the proper management. Literally hold your hand the entire way. It's not cheap, but it's almost like paying a development consultant that fee. And I think if it's your first time doing it and you want to do it yourself from the ground up, it's probably well worth it to pay him to help you. So yeah, we don't do any franchising in the storage space. Yeah, and there's a lot of there's Mark Helm. If you ever want to look up, if some of you guys want to know some other resources, there's Mark Helm. He does coaching. He puts out a YouTube video every Friday. He's kind of one of the OGs. He wrote that book, Creating Wealth Through Self-Storage. That book I mentioned from 2016, 2017. I read like 4 times. Great guy. Scott Myers is another one. AJ Osborne is one that's pretty big in this industry. He wrote a book as well. And he has like a coaching group and all this stuff. So there are people out there, if you want to get into the business, that can help you do it. So I don't do that right now. I may start something later on, but yeah.
I think you should.
I know we talked about that. So yes.
Yes. Like if you create because I mean, I haven't even been in real estate that long, but I think like I grew up I mean, you know my family, so we didn't learn anything about money, anything about investing, whatever. So we're all just kind of clawing our way through life, right? But sometimes when you read these things like cap rate, this, that, it feels like everyone is so far ahead.
Your mind is about to explode, right?
Yes,
yeah.
And like average agent, like they may have plenty of that capital, but they just don't know. So I think you should really like start something like that. But,
I think I might actually contacted a guy who does a lot of this stuff. He helps people raise money and he builds websites and like personal brands. So I actually talked to him last week about it. So he got me a quote. So I'm thinking of getting further into that. I realized the power and importance of having an email list. So wanting to build that up as well. So if you guys connect with me online anywhere, and then you want to follow me down the road. You might not see something for a little while, but then all of a sudden something pops up on Instagram. It's like, oh, that's that guy, Kris. That's Sarah's
Yeah.
brother-in-law. Yeah, I think I'll follow that guy. So yeah, little shameless plug there. So
Email
down
list.
the
You're
road,
speaking my love
yeah.
language. Listen, just I'll come over and I'll help you with your email list. I love it. Okay.
Yes, there
And
that.
then
Yeah.
our last
What?
comment says,
Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead and then read you. No, you go and I'll
I was
read
going
you
to
the comment.
say something that's I think interesting is to see how money. Two things. One is how money is made, and then a quick comment on like what you said about the cap rate stuff. I
Yeah.
remember like it was yesterday. I was working with a commercial guy in Charlotte. His name is Mark Hermans. He's still here, actually, in the Concord, Charlotte area. We met up a little while. Anyway, the point is that he was buying single family homes back when I started. So he would call me up and say, Kris, what do you got? Blah blah blah. Or I call him up and say, hey man, we got this coming. Blah blah blah. He would pay all cash. So back then, you could buy it was a crappy home, but you could buy like a 2 or 3 bedroom house near downtown Concord, North Carolina, for $50,000. $75,000, under $100,000. So he would buy these homes, fix them up, and then rent them out. And so he would always pay cash. He'd always send me his proof of funds before making an offer, and always he had the cash in the bank. And one time he taught me about cap rates, and I remember standing in this home that he was going to buy by the windows. I like yesterday, and he explained to me what a cap rate is. Here's the revenue. Here's my expenses. And then at the end is a cap rate. Because I pay all cash, Kris, I'm just looking for, I think at the time, like a 10 cap or whatever the number
Yeah.
was. So if you do if you look at a deal and you run these numbers and it's a 10 cap, you call me right away. We'll buy that house. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I have no clue what you're talking about, but let's do it. I had no idea, right? And being Asian, that's a little shameful. So I had no idea
Oh my
what he
God.
was saying with the numbers. But it just takes a little, it's not hard. I have YouTube videos. If you go to Storage Investor Nation and just look through our YouTube videos, you'll see me on there. You'll see John and a few other guys from our firm talking about stuff. I have stuff on there where I open up a spreadsheet and I talk about the different types of returns and how those are calculated, et cetera. But the point is that it's not hard to understand. It just takes a little extra time, and you can get your head around it. It's not difficult. It just takes a little extra work and maybe a little hand holding along the way. So don't let it, anybody watching or listening to this, don't let it intimidate you. Don't let the numbers intimidate you. And the second
Cap
part
rate was
is,
one of those oh, sorry, I'm gonna let you, but on my real estate exams, I kept messing
yeah,
up on the cap rate
yes.
questions.
Yeah,
Like,
cap rate. It was at Superior School in
yeah,
Charlotte. It's like, or Raleigh. It's like chapter 20, and that was like I used to teach real estate license classes, and that was like my favorite chapter. But it was like we only hit like maybe this much of it, and there's a lot.
well,
If
that's
I
what
look at real
screwed
estate,
me up on my test.
yeah, I was like, gosh, I wish they taught you guys more about this. But the other
I
side
know.
of it too is how do we make money? So if we buy, so usually we'll look for $10 million deals. And so put yourself in the shoes of like, you're going to go out and you're going to look for deals and you're going to buy a deal and partner with somebody. Let's pretend all the pieces of the puzzle are in place and you're going to go out there and buy an apartment complex. Okay, how does that work? And how does Sarah or how does anybody watching make money on this thing? All right, so we go out, we find an apartment complex that's $10 million, right? Well, we're going to take, let's say we're partners. We're going to take what's called an acquisition fee. And that acquisition fee can range. There's no set commission. There's no set acquisition fee, right? So it can range, but it's typically 1% to 2% of the purchase price when you get that big. Smaller deals might have a little bit different, whatever, but 1% to 2%. So we take a 2% acquisition fee. So that 2% times the 10 million, right? We can do the math real quick. That's $200,000 in an acquisition fee. If that fee is just going to me and you, Sarah, we would split that 50-50. So that's $100,000 each. That goes to keep the lights on, pay the bills. Maybe we use some software, we have some office expenses or whatever, and then we take the rest home. If we put some money in the deal as well, we put in whatever, $100,000 each or something like that, we get a portion, our prorated. Let's say we put money in and we raised money. So we put in like 10% of the equity needed to purchase that property. We would get about 10% of that rental income every month after all our expenses were paid and the mortgage was paid, right? So just like your house, just like your personal budget, you pay all your expenses, including your mortgage, and then whatever's left over, that's what you go to Disney World with, right? And so hopefully, or you go buy gas because gas is so expensive. So it's the
Not
same
me.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm riding my bike. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing in commercial. You
Yeah.
pay all your expenses, you pay that mortgage or your debt service is the fancy word for it. And then whatever's left over gets distributed to the partners pro rata or prorated based upon what they put in. Then at the end, we're going to hold it for 5 years. We sell that property. Let's say it's worth, I don't know, $20 million just to keep the numbers easy. We've paid down our mortgage over time. We just made a buttload of profit, right? So whatever our percentage is that we put in, that's what we get back as far as our investment is concerned. So we'll get our money back plus a little extra. But the way the profit is split up is not always pro rata, prorated. So if we put in 10%, we don't get just 10% of the profit on the back end. There will be a tier or what it's called like a waterfall. In a sense, when you get your commission from your broker, you don't get the whole thing, right? So your client might be like, well, you're making 3%. That's X amount. I'm not paying all that. Well, they don't
Mhm.
understand, right? That it doesn't all go to you. It goes to your broker, your firm. They take their
Right.
portion, then you have your portion, then you pay taxes on that portion. So really what you take home is much, much less than what that commission is. That in a
Right.
sense is like a tiered structure. Other people get paid first, then you get yours. It happens the same way in commercial, but the split at the end is not always prorated. So if you put in 10%, we don't get 10%. We might actually get 50%. It would be
No.
split up after certain what they call if you think of like hurdles, like jumping hurdles in
Okay.
the Olympics or whatever, there's certain
Mhm.
hurdles of return. So if the passive investor makes a 10% return, they will get 70% of the profits. If we make a 15% return on their money, they will get from the 10 to the 15, they'll get 50% of that, and we get the other 50%. So our portion grows, but a greater rate than the investor, the passive person. They still make a great return. They'll make 15, 20%, whatever the number is, they'll make a great return. But we'll make 30% or whatever on that. It won't be as much like the actual numbers. It's not like we're making millions and millions or whatever. It's not that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just the amount that we put in. It's just an uneven distribution at the very end. So that's how these guys make money. What that does, you might think, well, that's kind of not fair for the passive guy, right? That's not really, no, because if we want that bigger piece of money at the end, we're going to push hard to make sure we raise our rents on time, we keep our expenses low, we keep the property up, we keep it occupied because we know we got a big carrot on the stick at the very end. And it pushes
And
us
you're
to work
doing the work.
harder.
Like, you and your
Yeah.
partner aren't necessarily passive because you're doing the work of keeping this
No,
property.
no, we're
Yeah,
doing the work.
it
We're
makes
on
sense for
calls
you.
with the property management company. We're visiting, we're
Yeah.
secret shopping, we're monitoring the market. If there's construction going on, we're overseeing the construction. If there's problems, we're fixing the problems. We're involved with that process. And we're also looking for the next deal because if we're doing a good job for our investors, they want to repeat the investment with you on a continual basis. So we're looking for the next deal as well. We're keeping the lights on. We're keeping compliance with the SEC. We have the accounting department. There's a lot that goes on that we're handling for it. We're not just like sitting back doing YouTube or StreamYard
Chilling.
streams all the time, right? No, we're not doing
Yeah.
that. So that's how. But then the other part of it, and listen to the last, I know I'm going long here, but the last part of it
Yeah.
is what we don't remember are the tax benefits. Okay, the tax benefits. So when you purchase a $10 million property, there's something called depreciation. We covered that in your real estate licensing classes. But without getting into the weeds, you like basically it's a write-off. When you buy equipment or you do something for your real estate job, you might buy some clothes or whatever. You can write that
Yeah.
stuff off on your tax. You have a home office, you write that stuff all your taxes, and it reduces your income. The same exact thing. We buy a building, you can depreciate that. It's a write-off on your taxes. Well, what we do is we get what's called a cost segregation study done, and what it does is it looks at the entire building and says it's not just the whole building that we're going to depreciate over 27 whatever it is years for residential. No, there's components in there: the sinks, the bath, the cabinets, the carpet,
Mhm.
the this, the that, whatever. We break the entire building down to its individual pieces, and those can be depreciated on different schedules. Not everything at 27 and a half or whatever the number, I can't remember now, for
Yeah.
residential, but some of those get depreciated over 5 years, some over 10 years. So you accelerate the depreciation in a sense, you cost segregate the components, and that gives you much more depreciation in the early years and less in the latter years. It's not split up evenly. So what does that do? Kris, you're confusing me here. I'm freaking all this stuff. I don't understand. You're making money from the acquisition fee. You're making some money from the rent. You make some money on the profit when you sell the deal. And you got this depreciation thing. It's like a write off. I get that. But what does that mean? Okay, let's say we make $200,000 this year in income from doing our stuff because of looking at multifamily deals. Because we're active in the deals, the IRS treats us differently. They say you can take that income, that depreciation, and actually apply it to your active income as a real estate professional. So there's a status called real estate professional. So all of the money you make from your commissions and all that stuff now goes to essentially zero. So you pay no taxes on any of that stuff. And that is the power of it. So then when you have more depreciation than you had in income, let's say all that depreciation equaled on a $10 million deal, let's just keep the numbers easy. Let's say it equaled $1 million and you made $250,000 in active income, like closing deals and finding, whatever, doing your stuff. Well, you have $1 million in depreciation. That offsets that 250. The taxes you paid, you get back in a check that year, and you carry forward the remaining $750,000 of depreciation to the following years. So the more deals you do, the more depreciation you stack up, the less in taxes you pay over time. Gives you more money in your pocket to accelerate that growth and find more deals and pay your bills and all that stuff. And what you're doing is you're finding deals to make them better. You're finding things to make them better. That's the idea. It's a value add strategy. So we don't pay taxes. Like that's
crazy.
Yeah. So that's why as a residential broker, guys, I know 3% commission, split it up 50-50, 70-30, 60-40, whatever the split is, then you get that. And now your check is $5,000. But of that, you pay your Social Security, your self-employment tax, another 15.5%. And then now you're left over with this much. So now you got to close 10 deals in order to get this much money in this month or next month or this quarter or whatever in order to pay your bills. And then hopefully you have enough left over. Like there's a rat race even there as a self-employed person. It is. I've been there and it's frustrating. I totally get that. And so if you start investing in these properties, you get the depreciation benefits that wipes all that away, except for your split, obviously, with your firm. So then you want to start your own firm so you can take more of that home for yourself. There's time involved in that, of course, and cost, etc. But that's where this is going. That's the whole process. So that depreciation is super beneficial. And you've also are building your net worth as you go along.
Right. Oh, this is why I do marketing. All the numbers. The math is like my brain
But see,
hurts.
that's the thing though. Okay. So you do the marketing, like partner. I'm not telling you what to do, but like, okay, you're good at something, right? Fine. I'm not good. I can do the numbers, but that's not the thing I do. So John, he's the CPA by trade. That's his background. He's a number. If you met him, he's a numbers guy. It's my partner on the self-storage team. He's a numbers guy. If you met him, he is the numbers guy. You can tell. I'm the talker. I'm talking 100 miles a minute. We're already going over an hour. So so John's the numbers guy. So I everything he does, like, and he's great at it. Like, I don't want to get involved in the weeds on that stuff. So you find that's how partnerships work also. You don't want to find somebody who's really good at what you do also. You're going to butt heads and not do well as a partnership. You want to find somebody who complements your weaknesses in a sense and kind of helps you there. So that's, you do marketing, shoot. That's a good skill to have. Absolutely.
Yeah, numbers person. All right. Let's do these last two things. And then someone just said, okay, I have an acreage. Okay, I can't see their name, but I will send it to you later. I have to go on to, but it says have acreage listing right now, 7.1 acres, 1.2. I don't know what that means, but
where is it?
Anyway, good question. I will have to go into the group. I'll go into the group and get the information. But had a buyer want to subdivide property into 2 parcels, 2 acres, and the other 5.1 acres rezoned. The larger parcel would be ideal for storage and car wash, blah, blah, blah. Not sure what you need. So anyway, I'll send that person's information, or I'll send.
Just send it to me. Yeah, that's easier to handle that way.
And then the other one said, what are the best places to meet with commercial investors? Do most use LoopNet or CoStar for their approach to finding properties? Looking at some Rite Aid properties that were bought out on Wells Fargo properties that they are downsizing and trying to figure out how to connect with these folks. He said maybe more of an offline discussion, but
it depends it depends on the quality. So meetup.com, usually you can find some sort of investing meetup happening in your town, your city. And again, that quality might vary, but you just go to a meeting or two and find out if it's quality people or not. There are, if you go to biggerpockets.com, it's a weird name, biggerpockets.com. They have a Facebook group page, a number of other places to connect with people, a forum and all that. Literally go there and post what you have, and people reach out. You can connect with them that way, either on the Facebook page or on their website via the forum. There's also another one called Best Ever. It comes from like Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever. It's like Joe Fairless is the original, like the founder of that, but they have a really solid Facebook community as well. It's Best Ever. Just look at Best Ever, like CRE, I think, or something like that. They do an annual conference as well. They have coaching available. So there's a lot of, so biggerpockets.com, Best Ever CRE, or just look up Joe Fairless. That will help you there, or meetup.com locally. That might help you find some folks in the area who might be able to connect with and go from there.
And one of these days, Kris is going to do all this himself, and then you could get all the information just from him.
There you go. Yeah.
Go to my thing. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, thank you. This was, I mean, I found it super interesting because, I mean, I know we see each other, but we've
never talked about it. Yeah.
Commercial. Our family is way too. We have a lot of other stuff to talk about. So, but thank you so much for coming on. It was really fun. I really appreciate it. And I will connect you to any of these people. They're saying thank you, very interesting, and all that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Really thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.